Hey guys, what's up? So in this video, we're going to be deploying our application to Heroku, which is a platform as a service tool that makes it easy for us to deploy our applications. Now we're going to be looking at how we can use tools such as GitHub to deploy our code, as well as to use GitHub with Heroku. Now if you haven't yet created a Heroku account, please create one, and we're going to be using Heroku's free service for deploying our application. We're also going to be using Gionicon as our server in production, and we're also going to look at how to use tools like white noise and DJ database URI. So let's get started. Now the first thing we're going to do is to change some of our settings here. So I'm going to go to our blog project, and then within our settings, I'm going to be changing some of the settings for production. So I need to remove some of the comments right here, and now I've removed these comments. So the next thing is going to be to change some of our settings. Now I'm going to change some of our settings in here so that we can be able to read them as environment variables instead of variables. So the first thing I'm going to do is to install Python Decouple, which is a tool that's going to make it easy for us to read these environment variables from our environment. Now what I'm going to do is to pull up our terminal. I'm going to stop us out with Ctrl and C. Then I'll pick 3, install Python, and then Decouple. So this will go ahead and install Python Decouple, and we have it installed successfully. So I'll pull up my terminal, I'll pull down my terminal, and what I have to do is to first import a variable called config from Decouple. So what this variable is going to help us to do is going to help us to basically read our environment variables using their respective keys. Now I'm just going to come right here, and what I'll have to do is to say from Decouple, we are going to import our config. And right after importing our config, now I'm going to go ahead and change some of the secrets that we may have. I'm going to begin with our secret key right here. And this secret key is supposed to be kept as a secret in production, so we shall need to change it. I'm going to come right here, and what I have to do is to remove it. So I'll just come and declare it as config, and then I provide the key as secret key. And the next thing I'm also going to do is to do the same thing for our debug. So I'm just going to run our app with debug, and this will also be an environment variable. So I'm just going to set it with config, and then I'll come right in here and then change this to debug. And what I have to do in this case is to also state the way we want to cast this variable. Now by default, Python Decouple reads our environment variables as strings. So if we're to read our boolean as a string, it will come as a string, and we want to actually use this as a boolean. So we'll have to cast this to a boolean. So I'll just come and say cast is equal to boolean. And this means that we're going to read our environment variable as a string, but then we shall get it as a boolean. Now within here, we'll have our allowed hosts, and I'm simply going to come and change this to star, meaning we are going to play around with most of the URLs we shall have. And this has actually given us the permission to use any URL for our app in production. Now I'm going to also go right straight to our database settings right here, and I have to change our dictionary for databases. Now by default we are using SQLite 3, but in production we're going to be using PostgreSQL to deploy our application. Now what I have to do is to remove this. I'm going to come and get rid of this, and we shall have an empty database dictionary for now. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to head over to our DJ database URL website, which is on our PyPy here. And the first thing I'm going to do is to install DJ database URI. So I'll copy this and then come within our project, and what I have to do is to install our DJ database URI within our virtual environment. So after installing our DJ database URI, I'm going to go ahead and use DJ database URI to set up how our database is going to be run, or how we're going to connect to our database in production. Now I'm going to come to the website right here. So we basically have some of the descriptions in here, and I'm going to just come right here. So we have DJ database URL config method that basically returns the database connection. Now I'm simply going to go right here, and what I have to do is to import our DJ database URI. So I'll do just that. So I'll come at the top of our code and then import our DJ database URL. And right after importing it, I'm going to set up our first setting that's going to allow us to specify how we're going to connect to our PostgreSQL database. I'm just going to come right here, and all I have to do is to paste this code in here. So I'll go to where we have our database settings, and I'm going to simply set this and save. Now after doing that, I also come and provide a default database we want to connect to. Now I'm going to be reading this from my environment variable, so I'll copy this and I'll come and paste it right in here. So instead of having this as a PostgreSQL URL, we're going to read it from my environment variable. So I'll just come and fix some of this, and then I'll say config, and in this case it's going to be database URL. Now right after doing this, I'm going to go ahead and set up our file. So we actually have some of these settings, and I think we are done for now. Now let's go and also manage the way we're going to be deploying or showing our static files in production. Now Django's web server cannot be able to run all these static files in production, but thanks to white noise we can be able to serve these static files with ease. So white noise is a tool that helps us to simplify the way we serve our static website files like images, CSS and JavaScript in production. Now I'm going to open the white noise documentation right here, and the first thing we're going to do is to install white noise. So I'll just come right here and install white noise. I'll pull up our terminal and then install white noise. So after installing white noise, sorry for this, I'm going to go back here, and what you're going to do is to set up our middleware to allow us to use white noise. Now we're going to come right here in our settings.py, and then you go to the middleware section. So the first middleware we're supposed to have is the one for our security middleware. So we already have that. Now simply going to add our white noise middleware. So I'm simply going to come right here and add our white noise middleware right here, and then save. So I'm also going to go ahead and set up our static file storage. So I'll just come right here and change this to static file storage. So I'm going to come and copy. I'm actually going to paste this within our static file settings right here. And right after adding that, now I'm not going to forget one very important setting, and that is our static root setting. Now just come and add this here. So I'm going to come and say that we're going to have a static root, and this static root is going to be equal to our base dar. Sorry for this. So this will be our base dar, and then slash. In this case, we're going to say it's going to be our static folder. So hoping that everything is fine, we're going to go ahead and now set up our application to run in our Heroku environment. So the first thing I'm going to do is to set up our, when you're in development, you shall have most of the variables you've configured as secrets being read from our .env file. So I'll create one. I'm just going to come right here and create a file called .env. And right in here I can have things such as our secret key, and now we can have the key as well as the value. So in this case we're going to have value, a secret, and I can even make sure that you have a database URL. So in this case we're going to have database URL, and shall keep it simple, shall keep it one SQLite database, and this will be our db.sqlite3. So we're also going to have a debug value. So in development, we're simply going to have this as debug, and this will be having a value of true. Now, after having this, then the next thing is actually going to be to, I think we are done for now. We've set up most of the variables we need in development. So let's say we were to run our server again with Python 3, money.py, and then run server. Now in this case our server is going to run, meaning that we have set up our environment variable as well. So if I were to run Python 3, I'm sorry for this, so I'll come to the terminal right here and run Python 3 money.py and then migrate. So right now we don't have any migrations to run, but let's go ahead and actually check out so what we're actually going to do in this case is to set up our server so that you can be able to run it in a Heroku environment. Now the first thing we're going to do is to install a driver for Postgres that's going to allow us to connect to our remote PostgreSQL database. So I'll pull up our terminal right here, and the first thing I'm going to do is to install our driver. So I'll do pip3 and then install, and then I'm going to install this driver. So it's going to be a binary, and I'll go ahead and install that. So after installing it, now I'm going to freeze all of our requirements to requirements.txt file. That's going to allow us to basically be able to keep track of all the packages so that we inform Heroku that those are the packages we're going to use for our project. Now what I have to do is to freeze this. So I'll say pip3 and then freeze. And then I'm going to go ahead and freeze this to requirements.txt. So after freezing this to requirements.txt file, we have all of our requirements here, which is good. Now we're going to go ahead and also create a runtime.txt file that's going to inform us about the Python version we're going to be using for our production environment. Now simply come right in here and I'll create a new file. So I'll create this file and call it runtime.txt. And right after creating this file, I'm going to specify our Python variable. So I'll say Python. I'm going to pull up my terminal here and check out the version that we are using, which is 3.9.7. I'll run out of the shell. I'm going to pull down our terminal, and then I come right here and say that we're going to have Python 3.9.7. So I'm going to go ahead and save. And after saving this now, I'm going to create a proc file. So the proc file is a file that's going to contain the Gunicorn command that's going to run our server in production. So the first thing I'm going to do is to install Gunicorn. And after installing Gunicorn, I'm going to actually import it to our requirements.txt file. So I'm just going to come right here and install our Gunicorn. So after installing it, I also add it to our requirements.txt. And after adding it to our requirements.txt, I'm simply going to go ahead and create our proc file. So the proc file is a file that's going to allow us to make it easy to basically run our server in production. Heroku will check for the proc file and then be able to run our application. So I'm just going to come right here, and what I have to do is to create a new file. And this file is going to be the proc file. And once you have the proc file right here, I'm simply going to come and state the command that's going to run our project. So I'll start with specifying that we're going to use web, and then we're going to write the command that's going to run our server. So in this case, it's going to be Gunicorn, and then we are going to specify the app to run. So for example, if I pull up our terminal right here, we have Gunicorn installed within our environment. I'll simply call our project folder, which is blog, and then actually it's blog project, and then within blog project I'll have to give a call to the WSGI file. So this WSGI file is a file that exposes our WSGI callable that can run our application. So I'm going to pull up our terminal again, and when I run, in this case it's actually going to be .wsgi. This is actually going to run our server at localhost 8000. So this is the exact command that we are going to run our server with in production. And just simply going to come right here and then specify that we're going to have blog project. And in this case, we're going to say blog project, and we're going to access the WSGI file. And in this case, we shall have to also keep track of values. So I'll specify log file and save. And right after doing that, I'm simply going to come right here. And now the next thing I'm going to do is to be able to run this, deploy this to our GitHub repository. Now I'm going to create a git ignore file that's going to allow us to basically ignore some of the files that we don't want to push to our project in production. I'm going to create a new file here, and this is going to be a git ignore. And this git ignore file is going to have the different files that we don't want to keep track of when we are pushing to GitHub. So I'll just come right here and I'll search for the Python git ignore. I'm just going to come right here and say Python git ignore. And the Python git ignore includes all files that you may want to leave out when basically dealing with your Python project. So I'm simply going to come right here, and all I have to do is to copy everything that we have here. So I'm just going to come and copy all these, and right after copying them, I'm simply going to paste them within here. And once we have that, now I'm going to go ahead and create our Git repository. So I'm going to come and pull up my terminal, and then I'll say git init. So this is going to initialize a Git repository right in here. We can see that some files are even tracked and some are left out. Now the ones that are left out are the ones that are actually part of our git ignore. So after creating our repository, I'm now going to add all of our files. So I'll just come here and say git add all, and then I'll commit this. So I'll say git commit, and then in this case I'll come and say we're going to call this our initial commit. And right after doing this, now the next thing is going to be to actually I'll first add all of our requirements to txt, and then I'll repeat the process so that you don't leave anything out. And after doing that, I'm going to go ahead and basically push this to my Github repository. So I'm going to come on my GitHub repo here, in my GitHub account. So on my GitHub, I'm going to create a new repository. And what I'm going to do is to give this repository a name. So let's say we're going to call this Django. And in this case, we're going to say Django website. And I'll simply I can give a description or leave it out. I'm simply going to go ahead and create a repository. Now we also have some comments here that may allow us to create this repository. Now I'm basically going to come and copy our URL here. Since we've added everything to our Git repository here in development, we're now just going to inform GitHub that we're actually going to inform Git that our remote repository is this repository right here. So having our URL right here, I'm just simply going to come and specify it as our remote URL. So I'm just going to come and say git remote, and then I'm going to add origin, and I'll paste in our URL. So right after doing that, I'm simply going to go ahead and rename our main branch to that main branch that we have. So I'm just going to come and say git branch. In this case, I'll say -m, and then I'll come and say main. And right after doing that, I'm going to push to our main branch. So I'll just come and say git push u. In this case, I'm going to say we're going to push to our remote main branch. And this will go ahead and push our code. Now when I go this side and I refresh, we now see that our Django application or our code has actually been pushed to GitHub. Now that's ignoring all the files that we actually ignored in our git ignore. So the next thing is going to be to deploy our app to Heroku so that you can be able to share it on the internet. I'm simply going to come here on our Heroku. Now, having created a free Heroku account, you can have access to this dashboard. So on the dashboard, I'm just going to come right here, and within our app section, I'm going to create a new app. And when I create an app, I'm going to give it a name. So I'll just come right here and let's say I'm going to call this Django for beginners. This name is existing, so I'll just come and create this app. And right after creating this app, we're going to be redirected to the deploy tab. So within here, we can specify the different ways in which we may want to deploy our application. Now, since we have our app on Heroku, on our GitHub, I'm simply going to come and connect our app to our GitHub repository. Now I'm going to be prompted for our repository names, or our repository name in this case is actually Django website. So I'm just simply going to come here and say Django. In this case, we're going to have it as Django website. So I'll search. And now our repository is here, so I'll connect it. And after connecting this, now I'm going to come here so we can be able to easily push to the branch that is our main branch, and then be able to see all of our changes when we specify that we want automatic deploy. So I'm going to enable them, and I'm also going to create our first deploy. So in this case, I'll just come here and deploy our branch. But before I do that, let me actually first come to our settings. Now, before I deploy anything, I've decided to basically go ahead and set up some of our settings as we have them in our environment variable. So I'll just come right here and reveal our config vars. Now, the first config var we're going to set up is going to be our secret key. And right after setting that up, now I'm going to give it a value. So I'll head over to our VS Code. Now I'm going to use Python secrets to generate for us a figure that we shall use as our secret key in production. So I'll just come here and say it's actually going to be Python 3. And then I'm going to import secrets. And right after doing this, I'm going to simply come here and say secrets.token, in this case X. And this is going to generate this figure, so I'll copy it. And right after copying it, I'm going to paste it right in here. Actually, I haven't copied it, so I'm just going to simply come and copy it, then I paste it in here. So this is actually our secret key. I'm going to add it. Now another thing I'm going to add here is going to be our debug. So I'm just simply come and state this. So I'm going to keep it to true, but we shall set it to false after we successfully deployed our app. So the reason that's why I'm keeping it true is because if you have any errors, you shall be able to actually know the exact error that we have. Now another thing I'm going to specify is disable collect static, since we're not going to be keeping track of our static files or collecting our static files every time we are pushing to our remote repository. So I'm just going to come here and say disable collect static, and then I'll give it as 1, which is actually true. And right now we have all this, but if we go back here, we have our env file, and this env file has a database URL. Now, for development, we've been using SQLite, but in production, we're going to be using Heroku's PostgreSQL database. Now, I'm going to come right here and provide for us a database. So I'll come to resources, and then I'll have to search for an add-on. And in this case, we're going to be using Heroku Postgres. So Heroku Postgres is the free Postgres database URL that's provided to us by Heroku for deploying our projects. Now, when you order for it, you're given a submit form, and then you have to choose the plan. But since we do not have money, we're going to use our free plan. I'll submit the order form. And now I'm going to simply go and basically we've been able to attach this to our project or our app. So when you go back to our settings and our config variables here, we have our database URL set for us. Now, since we've already attached our project to our GitHub repo, now it's time that we basically go ahead and deploy it. So I'm just going to come here and click deploy branch. And this is going to go ahead and basically deploy our branch. So just like you can see here, it's going to install all the dependencies that we have for our project, and it's going to read them from our requirements, so txt. So right now we see that our project has been deployed to this URL. So I'll come at the top of our code right here, at the top of our website, and then open our application. So right now we see that our database does not exist because this table for post does not exist. So what we shall have to do is to run our Heroku shell or our bash shell to help us to run our migrations. Now I'm simply going to come right here to more, and then what I have to do is to run our console. And now I'm going to come and say that we're going to run our bash shell. So this is going to provide for us a Linux terminal that's going to allow us to run our migrations. So when I come right in here, I can run ls, and we can be able to see the various files that we have within our project. Now that we have this, I can simply come and say -3, since we are on Linux, and then I'll run manage.py, and then I'll simply come and say migrate, and this is going to run our migrations. Now hoping that is fine. I'll simply come right in here and refresh, and now we can see that we've successfully deployed our application. Now the problem is that when we don't have any posts, we actually have this blank page. Now this is something that we're going to fix right now. So to fix this, I'm simply going to come right within our project, and I'm going to head over to our index.html template because that's our home page. Now here we have our posts, and this is actually specifying that for post in posts, now we shall have for post in posts, now we're going to actually have our posts and then their titles. But in case we don't have any posts, we're not actually having anything that's going to display our posts. So I'm going to make a book search here, and I'm actually going to search for how to determine the length of our query set. So I'm just going to say length. I'm actually going to search for length in Django template. So in this case, we're going to search for the length of a Django template. So in this case, I'm just going to simply read. Just going to find out how we do that, so that we actually determine how. So in this case, we see if products, then number of products, then length, and if no products, then that is going to actually be no products. So here we have products length is greater than 0, then we can be able to show the length. So I'm actually going to change that. So what I have to do is I'm just going to simply come right in here, and what I have to do is to check if our list of posts has posts, and if it does not have, then we are going to basically make sure that we show no posts. So I'm just going to come and say if, and within this I'm going to say if posts, and then we shall use the filter of length. It's actually going to be if posts length, and in this case if the length is greater than 0, then we are actually going to do something. So I'll actually render the posts if our length is greater than 0, and if we do not have any posts, and I'm just going to add an else here, and within here we're just going to simply create a div of no posts. So I'm simply going to create this and call it no posts, and this is going to actually just contain one statement that's going to show us that this has no posts. Now I'm just going to come in here, and what I have to do is to create an h1, and this h1 is going to be centered. So I'm just going to call this, give it a class of no posts heading, or let's just call it head, and in this case I'll just say no posts, and when I save this, right now we have this. So we actually have, when we have posts, we're going to show the posts, and when we don't have posts, we're going to show no posts. So I'm going to run our server to verify if this is actually working. So I'll just come and say -3 manage.py and run server. So when you come right here, I'm going to head over to our localhost 8000, and when I refresh, we actually could not pass the reminder, so it seems like we've done an error here. So I'm simply going to come, and what I have to do is to check our syntax in our template. So we actually have if posts length, let's actually see. Let's actually change this to if posts. So I'll just come right here and say if posts, and when you save this, simply going to head over to our template here and refresh. Now we see that we have our posts. So let's say in a case where we don't have posts, so let me actually commit this so that we'll be able to see our changes. So I'm going to stop our server right here, and then add all the changes we've done. So I'll say git add all, and then git commit, and then I'm going to say that it's going to be our, so I'm just going to say change posts list and whatever commit message you may create. So I'm just going to push this to GitHub, and when I push this, we're going to notice something happening. So in this case, since we have automatic deploys, whenever I push to GitHub, our project is also going to be deployed to GitHub. Deployed to Heroku. Now we see that our changes are being pushed. So let's wait. Actually, we can even do the build progress. So it's now compressing and it's going to actually deploy our app again. So right now our application has been deployed. So when I head over to our project here, I'm going to refresh. It's actually not working. We are not seeing our posts, but let's try to create some. So I'll go and sign up. So I'll sign up with the user. I'll just say the user is going to have a username of Jonathan, let's say 35. So I'll provide an email, and let's say our email is going to be this email. Now I'll provide the password, then I'll also provide the password here, and now I'll say sign up. So the password is too similar to the username. Our validation is working, so maybe I'll provide another password. And then say sign up. So password is too common. So I'm actually going to create a stronger password. So let's say I'm going to say that we're going to have a password that's, and then I'll provide our password. I'm going to change this to something else. I'm finding it hard to come up with the password. And then I'll come and provide this as our password and then sign up. Now the password is also too common. Our validations are actually working really well. So let's say I'm going to provide another password. Now when I sign up, right now application has created our user account has been created. Now if I want to log in, I'll provide our username, which is Jonathan35, and then I'll come here and provide our password as our password. Now when I log in, right now we've been redirected to our page, so I'll create some posts. Hey guys, so in this video I'm going to be showing you the finished application after deploying it. I somehow got a problem when deploying and that actually interfered with my presentation. But what you have here is the way we create our posts. So when I come and create a post, now we can be able to create a post, so I can provide the sample title and I can provide content. So this is, I can say this is content, and then I provide an author, so I can choose a file here. I'll go to add downloads and then I'll choose a single file, and when I click submit, right now we see that our post has been created. So if I go ahead and create another post, I can just come here and say this is going to be a sample post 2. So I can say content 2. And then when I come here, I can provide our author and choose a file here. And I go to our downloads, I provide a thumbnail. And when I come and submit, right now we see that our post has been created. We can even move within our pages. So we have our second post right here. And our application has actually been created. So you can also look at things like how we can update this post. Now we can be able to change this by also showing the thumbnail right here. I'll leave that to you as a task. So we can be able to update this. So let's say it's going to be Django course for beginners. So this is going to be for our 4th post. And when I come right here, I can submit. And now when I go and see our fourth post, our post has actually been updated. In this series of videos, we've been able to look at how to develop web applications using the Django web framework. If you enjoyed this course, please click the subscribe button, and please leave a like. Share this video with as many people as possible, and do not forget to check out some of the other videos I have on the Django web framework. Thank you for watching, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye.